One of my first clues that the Bible wasn't legit was actually a gift in disguise. My husband's grandfather died, and his aunt gave us his Bible, which is right here. And we didn't pay much attention to it. David was glad to get it. But then when I started this research, I just happened to be looking through all my books, and I decided to check it out. Very interesting. So what we find out when you begin reading in here, first are several disclaimers about the information within. And I've got those, this is very tiny script, and so I've got those pulled out and I can attach them. Actually, I took a picture and then made some notes on my picture, and so I can attach those for anybody that wants to see it. But it was quite the eye-opener. Right at that time, first thing that I noticed, of course, after the disclaimers, that, the information probably was not quite all there. Let me see if I can pick up. I don't see it right in front of me. Anyway, here it is. Okay, this is Pilobet's Bible Dictionary of 1925. Basically says the dates found in the margin of our Bibles are at most points admirably accurate. They were reduced to system by Archbishop Usher in 1650 AD and first added to the English Bible by Bishop Lloyd in the Great Edition of 1701. Its greatest fault is its attempt to reduce the library or the history to millennial periods. Usher believed that the earth was created just 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus, and that Solomon's temple was dedicated just 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus. And he pulls some parts of the chronology awry to make it fit his theory. He regards the biblical numbers for the times before Abraham as chronological, which I think is a mistake. There are some matters in detail in which he lacked information that is now accessible. There are other notes which I could continue to read based on just clear problems with what's the content, basically. And then at the bottom, which is also very interesting, there's creation of man to the flood, and it's got those dates. Now, I'm not going to address that right now, but keep that in mind for one of my next presentations because that's very interesting. Okay, so what did I find in this Mason Bible? Well, who did they worship? Egyptians. Yeah. So their illustrations were plates 1 and plates 2, the gods of Egypt, Amen, Ra, Thoth, and Neith. Interesting, right? And the pictures were all there with the symbolism. And again, I'll put that on the site once I get the site going, right? Or I attend to things like that. At any rate, this is another just Bible problem for future. So that was very interesting, and I began then to wonder what that was all about. Here you can see some of the different plates. I know that there are a lot better ways to do this, but, for now, it's what it is. Interesting, right? So that started me out going, all right, let's figure this one out. And then you think, okay, the Masons, they want to be inclusive of everybody, so maybe that's the deal. Who knows? After that, I started looking out for books, obviously, older books, because that's the only ones that are worth anything, thanks to our administration. But it's easier for me now to go through books like this and know what to look for. This particular book is Monitor and Ceremonies of Ancient, Free, and Accepted Masons from Nebraska. And the date, I think, is 1909. So if you read through this, it's very interesting because they use all the symbolism and they have specific rites and specific prayers, and things have to be done in a specific order. They go over it and over it and over it. All right, so I'm reading, and one of the first things I find is that sorry about that. Lost my train of thought. Okay. One of the first things I did was start reading word for word all the rites and ceremonies, trying to pick up symbolism and clues and tie it in with other things I found, etc. And so I'm reading this poem, and it's, "Behold how pleasant and how good for brothers such as we, of the accepted brotherhood, to dwell in unity. 'Tis like the oil on Aaron's head, which to his feet distills, like Hermon's dew, so richly shed on Zion's sacred hills." And so I'm always curious, and I read things word for word. So first thing, I understand the oil on Aaron's head, right? So that doesn't catch me, but what does is Hermon's dew. And I don't remember what Hermon's dew was or could have been ever reading the scriptures. And I studied them for 33 years, and I'm pretty avid study person. So I start looking that up in some of the older dictionaries I find. And what I find is that this hill is at the top of, is in Palestine, North Palestine, almost to Damascus. And it is very steep. And it is known to just have so much dew that it collects at the top of these steep hills and then flows down and actually feeds the rivers of that entire area. So it's like a lifeblood to the people. But as far as the dew, so now we're talking about the dew, right? Of Hermon, of Mount Hermon, Zion's sacred hills. So then I start remembering about Praveen, one of the friends that I met at the Cosmic Summit. And if you haven't tuned into him, you really need to, because he's just wildly amazing person and humanitarian that's brilliant, but he is uncovering things in the Indian architecture and in the old Indian temples that people have really never noticed. Stories that have been there. Incredibly wild stories, like there are structures there that were created of women using hair dryers. Yeah. And some alien stuff and all kinds of stuff. But I trust Praveen, and he has been talking about the lingam, which is the phallic symbol and used throughout Indian or Buddhist, Hindu temples, all through there, in everything, just about. And it's a shape, kind of like this, like the Washington Monument, an obelisk or a phallic symbol. And so with this lingam, it's very interesting because he found an area where you poured water over the lingam, and underneath was this thin sheet of silver and a thin sheet of gold, right? And the water poured over created energy. And he actually does an experiment to show how that works. Now I'm connecting this, that is there a connection there? That when the water's poured over the lingam, which is the same shape as this steep mountain, and the dew feeds the river. And so, and it causes electricity. And we also know that they had a system of hydraulics back then. And there's some weird kind of system of water management from ancient of days. I mean, the people at Mohenjo-Daro, I used to say it right. Anyway, had the most incredible advanced systems, far advanced than what you and I are even used to. So this book has a lot in it, and I have not even begun to finish going through this. I've learned so much about the symbolism, and which brings me to my next point. It talks about the four cardinal virtues, right? And I thought, okay, I'm thinking Four Cardinal Virtues is Camelot, that song. And so I was looking for that. But no, it is that's the 7 cardinal virtues, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm looking for my notes. Or the 7 cardinal sins, I guess. All right, so now check this out. Cheesy wheezy. I'm not good with this part. All right, now I don't know where it is. Well, I guess I could just read it from the book. I can find it pretty quickly. I love these books so much, and I have so many, and I want more. Literally, they are piling up. Okay, here we go. The 4 cardinal virtues are temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Now, here's how they're explained. I'm not going to read them all. Well, maybe I will. All right, so these are all attributes of truth. Okay, so temperance is that due restraint upon our affections and passions which renders the body tame and governable, and frees the mind from the allurements of vice. This virtue should be constant practice of every Mason, as he is thereby taught to avoid excess or contracting any licentious or vicious habit, the indulgence of which might lead him to disclose some of those valuable secrets which he has promised to conceal and never reveal, and which would consequently subject him to the contempt and detestation of all good Masons. Then you go to fortitude, and they talk about fortitude, and it says, is that noble and steady purpose of the mind, whereby we are enabled to undergo any pain, peril, or danger, when prudently or prudentially deemed expedient. This virtue is equally distant from rashness and cowardice, and, like the former, should be deeply impressed upon the mind of every Mason as a safeguard or security against any illegal attack that might be made by force or otherwise to extort from him any of those secrets with which he has been solemnly entrusted, and which were emblematically represented upon his first admission to the lodge. Prudence teaches us to regulate our lives and actions agreeably to the dictates of reason, and is that habit by which we wisely judge and prudently determine all things relative to our present as well as future happiness. This virtue should be the peculiar characteristic of every Mason, not only for the government of his conduct while in the lodge, but also when abroad in the world. It should be particularly attended to in strange and mixed companies, never to let fall the least sign, token, or word whereby the secrets of Masonry might be unlawfully obtained. Justice. Justice is that standard or boundary of right which enables us to render to every man his just due, without distinction. This virtue is not only consistent with divine and human law, but is the very cement and support of civil society. And as justice in a great measure constitutes the real good man, so should it be the invariable practice of every Mason never to deviate from the minutest principles thereof. My mouth's too dry. Interesting, right? Then I was getting into this pretty much, and I read number 1, problematic sign. We learn from Josephus. And I know it's bunk, because Josephus was not real. It was a pen name for Calpurnius Piso and family that wrote most everything, the New Testament, the histories of Josephus, the antiquities, so many things. And he's quoted everywhere. He's the number 1 source for all biblical history, which is a crock. All right, so then I found this, the Phoenix. And the Phoenix is a whole nother discussion. And if you want the real lowdown, I would go to Archaics. With Jason Brashear, he has got the Phoenix down and can explain it much better than I could ever do. However, in this book, I found quite a few interesting comments and things like that. Mostly, I got information about the Phoenix, which I found very interesting, and how it applies to what is known about the Phoenix. It says, the Phoenix, neophyte, study the lives of the truly great of your brothers to be. Those who by precept and example are building greatness into, I guess these are the Greek letters, which I don't know, but it ends in E, so it'll rhyme. In their hearts they burn with fraternity's fire. Born of the sun, they struggle a while toward the sun, and departing, leave the world, or leave the vivid air singed with their honor. Interesting.